I agree with Rob Ager that the majority of movies to come out after the year 2000 just aren't up to the same level as in the decades before. So we've got post-millennial and pre-millennial. He did an excellent video several years ago called 26 Reasons Why Post-Millennial Movies Are So Awful! Triple exclamation mark. He goes over a lot of really interesting points, 26 points, and I could probably spend a lot of time talking about each one. And I never fully disagree with him. There are just a lot of points where I kind of half agree, and I think there's a lot more to be said. But I wanted to focus on 3 or 4 of the points that he made that I think are actually tied together, if we look deeper, by some phenomenological points that I can make that can help us understand why those 3 or 4 points all occur, how they're connected to each other. And that's his point number 11, dumb heroes, and also he says dumb villains. And I would go on to say, post-millennial films tend to have way too many dumb characters in general. And when you have a lot of dumb characters, the plot really suffers. The plot can look kind of dumb too, and it's just not that enjoyable. I'll go more into that. But also his point number 15, the uncinematic world of IT communication. How on earth is that related to dumb heroes and dumb villains? I'll go into that too. His point number 16, over-reliance on exposition. This is another communication-related problem. I'll go into that, what I think about it. And then I'm going to jump back to his point number 14, the problem of blank canvas, quote-unquote, art movies that are actually conceptually empty. So the first thing I want to say is I've often, and I'm sure many of you have often thought about the problem of violence in movies. It's been talked about for decades and decades. Is violence in film negatively affecting society and making society more violent? And to a lot of us, on the face of it, it is an immature, naive, really dumbed down way of looking at it. And to cut to the chase, I always say, and I've always said this, since I was a teenager I noticed this, same thing with violence in video games. Violence and this visceral stuff, like sex, sells. So the intention, clearly, by filmmakers and video game makers isn't to make society more violent. In some sense, it's to sell tickets, to sell copies, bums and seats. That also might be a little bit too simplistic, though, we also have to say. It's fun. You've probably seen that interview with Quentin Tarantino when he's arguing with this film critic in Los Angeles, I think. Because it's fun, Jan. Because it's... Why do you have to have all this violence, Quentin? Why does it have to be... Because it's fun, Jan. Because it's fun. I've always said this. Art, or media, film, whatever, is a mirror to society. And society mirrors it back. It's a mutually reflective or mutually reflexive, whatever, mirror. People in society, at some level, on some level, enjoy a bit of violence. So it's in the media. The media isn't causing it in society. More likely, society causes it to be in media. Well, what does any of this have to do with Rob Ager's point number 11, dumb heroes and dumb villains? Well, folks, as a society, you may have noticed, and I'm not going to beat up on millennials, but let's be charitable and say a different type of intelligence. That to those of us in our 40s and up doesn't look like intelligence, it looks like stupidity. The sorts of things that are valued, like intelligent protagonists, intelligent villains, the fact that those things are evaporating in movies, the fact that that kind of intelligence in characters is evaporating in movies, is a mirror to society. And Rob is really careful not to go into conspiracy stuff, but at the end of that point in the video, he says, "No, I don't want to go into conspiracies, and I don't want to get into all this, but some people might say that filmmakers are intentionally trying to dumb down society." Yeah, no, I wouldn't agree with that. That would be like saying violent video games are intentionally trying to make society more violent. But in the other direction, yeah. I think that a society where there's more and more people who just generally aren't intelligent, not in the way that most Gen Xers and Boomers would consider intelligent, that's being reflected. Now, maybe this is a little bit too uncharitable. There's another aspect to this. And funnily enough, it's red letter media on the exact kind of opposite spectrum of film analysis from Rob Ager. Rob Ager being amazingly well-researched, amazingly analytical, pretty academic. On the opposite end, you got the drunken boys over at Red Letter Media, but they've brought up a point many times that I think is instrumental, is really integral to understanding this problem of quote-unquote dumb heroes and dumb villains and dumb characters. That's China. That's Hollywood, and I use Hollywood in the broad sense, but that's filmmakers, the big studios, big budget movies, wanting to appeal to a vastly different culture. The Chinese market is huge. So we can talk about cultural stupidity. And stupidity, again, is maybe too uncharitable of a word, not the right word to use, not a felicitous term to use. But I've even mentioned this on this channel. People that come from vastly different cultures, when they come to the West, when they come to Canada, America, Britain, whatever, they often seem like they're dumb, like stupid. They do things that just come off as stupid, like getting in your personal space, not realizing that it's not appropriate, talking too loud, eating really loudly. Okay, I'm not going to give all the examples, but what looks like stupidity to us is just being different, coming from a different culture. So when Hollywood, again using Hollywood in the broad sense, makes movies, and they want those movies to appeal to the Chinese market and Indian and Asia, they have to make it so that the characters make sense to those people from vastly different cultures too, to those audiences from vastly different cultures too. So what looks like stupid writing is actually just big budget filmmakers trying to make their stories and their characters as appealing to as many people as possible, and they don't do it well. I'm sure there's ways that you could write intelligent characters that make sense and appeal to both Westerners and Asians. I'm sure there's a way you could do it, but right now, screenwriters and directors and filmmakers at large aren't doing a very good job. And hey, it's a tall order. So the easiest thing to do, just make characters do stupid things. Don't give them too much going on intellectually. That way everybody can say, oh, well, you did a stupid thing, okay. It's lazy, but at the same token, I can see how it'd be really difficult to do. So maybe what you should do is stop trying to appeal to everybody. When you try to appeal to everyone, you end up dumbing your stuff down. That's a huge problem. So Rob doesn't go into any of that stuff. Of course, it's 26 points that Rob brings up, and he can't go too in depth with each one, so I just want to point that out. I think that's a big reason. Cultural quote-unquote stupidity in society being reflected in stupid characters on the screen. Now, in a weird way, this ties to his point number 15, the uncinematic world of information technology communication. Now, he's mostly talking about how text messages and smartphones and communications via the internet doesn't translate well onto film. I think that's arguable. I think there's some films that have gotten it right. But when we're talking about that, we're talking about communication. And near the end of that point in the video, he mentions that it really looks like younger generations are starting to lose their understanding of body language. Now, film is a visual medium, of course, and I would say, yeah, if we think about this deeper, think about how young people, okay, millennials, people 40 and below, a lot of the time you show them a movie from the 60s or 70s or whatever, and they just don't get how the performance is so great by any given actor or whatever. Because back in the day, part of being a great actor was using your body. Physical acting. Somebody who really gets this, maybe some people would say it's over the top, is Nicolas Cage. He's a student of German Expressionism, and German Expressionism came from the silent era. So you couldn't talk. There was no dialogue. You have to move your body in such a way that really gets the point across. Yeah, Nicolas Cage, next time you watch a Nicolas Cage movie, see how that kind of hyper-articulation and overly physical stuff that he does and the facial expressions, it starts to make sense, and I like it. And a lot of people like Nicolas Cage for that, even if you didn't realize that's why you like him. But again, and I'm not trying to entirely beat up on millennials and people that are young, 40 years of age and under, because I definitely know some Gen Xers and some boomers who don't get any of this stuff either. But even if you don't consciously pick up on body language, most of us we do still pick up on these things subconsciously. There's some percentage, supposedly, it's like 90% of communication is actually nonverbal. So coming back to his point about the uncinematic world of IT communications, it's not just uncinematic, it's kind of weirdly dehumanized, I might want to say. I'm going to be very careful about using the word autistic. I have autistic viewers. Autism is definitely on the rise, at least it's being diagnosed more and more, but God knows I know older people that show some of the signs. I'm not trying to criticize or pick on those people, but anybody who's autistic or anybody who knows anything about autism knows that one of the big factors in autism is not being able to pick up on nonverbal cues. I want to call this body language literacy. So we live in a culture where we're interacting so much more in text, especially now that we're not allowed to go outside and actually talk to each other. God, I hope this ends soon. Anyways, but we communicate more and more in text. Even I'm falling into it. Again, it's not even so much a generational thing, it's a societal shift. Where oftentimes somebody wants to call me on the phone and I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I can talk right now. And then I do a text or an email. This over-reliance on text-based communication is starting to atrophy our body language literacy. We as a society are becoming less and less body language literate. So to kind of tie that back to number 11, dumb heroes, dumb villains. Well, what would be a way to show intelligence in our heroes and villains? Well, the hackneyed, most simplistic way of doing it is through dialogue. Intelligent dialogue. Ooh, this character's clearly intelligent because of the words that he uses and the way that he speaks. That's the laziest way to do that. Intelligent actions in a visual medium like film. Intelligent actions show the character doing something. And you're like, why is he doing that? And then maybe half an hour later, oh, it pays off. That's why he was hiding that knife behind the toilet. Oh, that's why she dropped her car keys on the pavement over there. Oh, that's why. You can have visually represented intelligence. But more and more, people don't pick up on visual cues. Even really explicit things like that, people just miss them. Because we're becoming a less and less visually literate, body language literate, visually literate society, and everything has to be spelt out, literally in text form for us. And just slightly above that is spoken. Everything has to be spoken. Ah, James, you're such a hypocrite. You're doing a video right now without any actual video. You're just talking. Yeah, well, that's for the sake of time. Anyways, imagine how long it would take me to edit this video if I tried to find a visual representation for every single thing I say. Okay, number 16 that he brings up, an over-reliance on exposition. This is clearly related to the previous point, though I don't think he saw how it was, so I'm going to tell you how it is. Again, a communication issue. And I know people where I point this out. I say, oh, I couldn't watch that show or I couldn't watch that film because, oh my God, the exposition. Hi, Bob, how's it going? Yeah, pretty good. So, are you still mourning for your dead father? Why, yes, I am. I'm very sad. Shit like that. This over-exposition is overused. You can see how, though, the way that a Westerner manifests mourning, sadness, depression, you could see how that might not translate visually properly to people who are visually not so literate or from a different culture. You could see how these things wouldn't translate very well visually. I really hope Rob Ager is going to watch this or listen to this video because I'm sure he'd agree with a lot with what I'm saying, but I'm really drawing out things that he talked about to this deeper phenomenological level. And yeah, the over-reliance on exposition is going to have something to do with trying to appeal to people who aren't visually literate, who don't pay attention visually, or who are from vastly different cultures who won't pick up on those nonverbal, purely visual cues the way that visually literate, more intelligent maybe, perhaps mostly older, Western audiences would. And I wanted to mention that there are things on screen right now where you do get intelligent characters, where you do get visual things, visual cues to show you plot points, intelligent writing. It's on the quote-unquote small screen. It's on HBO. It's on Amazon. The Boys. Oh my God, The Boys, right? Carl Urban's character is really smart. He's really intelligent. He's cunning. Most of the characters on Game of Thrones, brilliant characters, really cunning. Well, why is that? Why is it happening on HBO and Amazon and streaming services on these TV shows, but not in big Hollywood movies and big budget movies? Because those streaming services don't care as much. I don't think at all about getting the Chinese market, getting the Asian market. That's why. Do you see that? Do you see that parallel? Do you think I might be onto something here, folks? Now I'm going to jump back to Rob Ager's Ager. I keep saying Ager. He's not something you put in a petri dish to grow stuff on, is he? Though I've grown this video upon the fertile substrate of his video, in that way he is like Ager. Sorry, I digress. Number 14 that he brought up that I found really interesting on his list was blank canvas quote-unquote art movies. This is a really interesting one. And I've definitely noticed this more so in music. I've noticed it, but mostly in the 90s, this started to happen in music, I noticed. Where I'm trying to think of the name of one artist I saw. They do an interview with her and like, so what is this song about? Because it sounds like you're talking about this, and it sounds kind of like it's this. And like one specific example I can think of was that song Emojin something, where it sounds like she's singing into a fan. Where are we? What the hell is going? People are like, oh my god, this is so brilliant. She's clearly talking about George W. Bush and the war in Iraq and blah, blah, blah. And people interviewed her and she's like, Okay, it turns out she was singing about something. She was singing about breaking up with her boyfriend and all the pain and sexual frustration she was feeling. But to other people, it sounded like, wow, this is some brilliant remark on George W. Bush and the war on terror. Now take that a step further. And this is the other artist I was thinking about, but this started to happen more and more in the mid to late 90s, where you had artists where they were writing stuff that didn't mean anything intentionally. The words just sounded cool together. Beck definitely comes to mind. I don't think Beck is singing about anything in Loser, okay? It's just a string of sounds that sound good together, word in his mind anyways, and into some people's minds. But you listen to some of these songs, and it's like, these lyrics clearly don't actually mean anything. Well, that's okay, James. You impose your own meaning on it. And I agree so wholeheartedly with Rob Ager that that's not good enough. A lot of people think that's true of David Lynch, and it's not. As Rob Ager points out, and I've pointed this out to other people too, it looks like just random noise and nonsense and fucking the red room and this guy's on fire and smash your head against the window and then you're out in outer space and everything's all fucking purple and what? It's just crazy madness. But it isn't. When you really have that visual literacy, when you're really attentive and analytical and really care about the film and really want to know what it's about, you can start to pick things up. Sometimes you might be wrong, but there are things built into good art films, if you even want to call them art films, good films in general, where there are these underlying subliminal themes and subliminal messages. Stanley Kubrick is the greatest example. I'm not even going to talk about Stanley Kubrick because Rob Ager has done such a great job on his channel with Stanley Kubrick films. So there's a difference between it looks like random chaos or it's really too artsy-fartsy for me, man, or whatever, but there is substance, there is something there. And I think David Lynch will be the first one to admit that he isn't always conscious of what that is, but he's being attentive. I don't know if Rob Ager has heard this interview or has heard David Lynch talk about this. He is being attentive to a specific, to use a philosophical term, I want to say quail? To the qualia of an idea, to some essential feeling, sentiment, some creative thought, some idea. He's being so attentive to it and how he represents it on the screen. And he doesn't like when people overlay kind of conscious meaning and really in-depth conscious interpretation. I'm pretty sure he doesn't like it. I'm pretty sure I've heard him say this. Or maybe he doesn't mind that people do that, but he doesn't do that. He doesn't try to overlay. You don't have to put this conscious framework over top of it. You just have to be attentive to the ideas. Anyways, but what's the problem? What was Rob Ager talking about? Number 14, the blank canvas art movies. That's those movies where there actually isn't anything meaningful. There isn't really any substance. It really is a lot of random crap or masturbatory cinematography. That goes back to kind of his points 2, 3, 4, and 5, which I won't get into on that list of his, but kind of like masturbatory stuff and the camera slowly pans, or maybe it's just random writing, just random dialogue, or whatever. It's artsy-fartsy and inscrutable, and you get these people that are just like, oh, this is so brilliant. Oh, this is so brilliant. These blank canvases where it's like you can just impose whatever you think on it. And that's the beauty of real art. It doesn't need to mean anything. It's what it means to you. No, I totally agree with Rob on this. That's not real art. That's bullshit. As Rob says, so who's the artist, me or you? What the fuck? It's so true. It's so true. There is so many more films like that coming out. And a lot of people like them. I even noticed Red Letter Media, those guys, even though they're it's funny. They're kind of lowbrow. Actually, Jay Bauman isn't, but Mike Stoklasa drags Jay Bauman down, I think. But anyways, but then they'll like a movie where it is one of those kind of blank canvas. Like Mike Stoklasa liked, I think it was called Horse Girl. And I watched it, and it's like, yeah, it's trying to be profound and clever in places, but it's really hackneyed and on the nose. Oh, she goes to buy this fabric and it's this weird pink weird color. Oh, and then later on she drapes it all over her apartment. Oh, the meaning. That's just kind of hackneyed shit. No, but there's deeper stuff going on, obviously. Is it obvious, or do you just think that there is? So it's funny, I'm digressing way off of anything that Rob Ager talked about, but I want to mention this. Yeah, you notice that people who actually aren't that analytical and aren't that bright can see things that they assume are intelligent and that they like because maybe they want to come off as being intelligent. But then, not to toot my own horn too much, but people like most of you who have listened this far, and myself and Rob Ager, we see those movies and we see through it. There's nothing really substantive, artistic, creative, profound going on. The filmmakers just try to make it look that way. It's fraudulent, it's phony, it's a facsimile of intelligence, of art, of creativity, of profundity, of philosophy. And I love how Rob Ager constantly shits on The Revenant. and the same thing with Blade Runner 2049, I have to mention these things. He hated Blade Runner 2049 for a lot of reasons that I agree with, but on a personal level, I couldn't fucking stand how Denis Villeneuve turned future Los Angeles, into Montreal. As I was watching it, it was just beating me over the head. I'm like, yo, did he just fucking turn LA of the future into Montreal? And as I'm watching, I'm like, no, I'm not imagining this. He really fucking did that. How fucking lazy. Way to phone it in. Oh yeah, maybe I'm going to just turn LA into the city that I already fucking know because climate change. And after the fact, I brought this up with some people, but I didn't really know anybody else who had lived in Montreal like I had, who also watched that movie. So it was always kind of like, I could be imagining this, but I really don't think I am. And then Cinema Tyler, I recently saw one of his videos where, Denis Villeneuve really did that. That fucking pisses me off. Anyways, that's a digression, but I just wanted to mention that Rob Ager hates that movie, and for a lot of reasons that I agree with, but he didn't bring that up because he probably has never lived in Montreal, so it's just a very personal thing for me. And likewise, and this actually harkens back to this thing about having to kind of dumb down movies to cross over cultural barriers and appeal to a wider audience. Sometimes you get these directors that are from South America or somewhere in Europe, and people just love them, and so often it is guilty of that blank art house bullshit, blank canvas, where it's like, this isn't really intelligent. It just looks like it is. And or the director tried to do something that was out of their league that they didn't really understand, and Rob Ager frequently shits on The Revenant for this. And I know maybe some people love that movie. As a Canadian, and again going to a personal level, as a Canadian or many Americans who live in really fucking cold places, you know where I'm going with this? What really pissed you off about that movie? I'll tell you what pissed me off. You can't lie down beside a river in the middle of winter in the snow and go to sleep and expect to wake up. Throughout that whole movie, they're dressed like it's fall. They're dressed maybe how you might dress on a cold day in South America. I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but it definitely stuck out to people that I spoke to, other Canadians. And who was it directed by? Alejandro Iñárritu. Buddy, maybe you should actually try living in a cold country for a little while and you'd realize you can't dress like that. It makes it so fucking unrealistic. It really pulled me out of that movie. And it pulled the actors out of their performances. A lot of the actors on that film complained about how he wouldn't let them put on more clothes. I'm like, dude, you gotta let us put more clothes on. It really pissed them off. A lot of them got sick. Because I think people from warmer climates think that Canadians and people that live in really wintry places where we have winter for like 5 or 6 months of the year. I'm looking out the window, it's all ice and snow, and it's going to be that way until halfway through April. And it's 20 degrees Celsius below out there. And that's fairly warm. Not warm, but I know it could get much colder, okay? I've gone through 45 below with the wind chill. I think people from warmer climates, from different cultures, right? don't understand, yo, it's not because we're like harder and impervious to the cold. It's because we dress accordingly. So much of dealing with a colder climate is psychologically dealing with it and behaviorally dealing with it. We dress warmer, right? We dress warmer. This is why, I mean, this is a bit of a digression, but like, this is why when it snows in parts of Australia, they really suffer. And it's like, Canadians, we have the tendency to look at that and laugh. Oh, you fucking pussies. Oh my God, it's like 5 below. Yeah, but they're psychologically and behaviorally not equipped for it. Their homes aren't built for it. So it's completely understandable. It goes in the opposite direction too. And this Alejandro Inarritu didn't fucking get that. And he didn't, I guess, understand that that would pull so many of us winter people out of the movie because it was so irritating and galling to see all the actors walking around what looks half naked to people like us. Just for the purpose of making this discussion, I looked up because I had to get his name. I'm like, what else did this guy direct? Oh, he directed fucking Babel. Oh, the biggest masturbatory piece of blank canvas art bullshit that I can remember. I had the displeasure of going to the movie theater to see. Because my German girlfriend at the time, yeah, James, we have to go see it. He's very brilliant. And of course, Germans have this weird fucking obsession with Latin Americans and Spanish people anyways. And I went to see Babel with her, and I'm like, wow, yeah, that wasn't very good. What do you mean? It's talking about the problem of communication. It's like the Tower of Babel and the problem of communication between different cultures. And yeah, I know that's what he was trying to do, and it was really hackneyed and simplistic and almost insulting to my intelligence and not well done and not really thought-provoking. Oh my God, James, why would you? Okay, I mean, I guess after you've just come right out of the cinema, you're supposed to pretend you at least enjoyed the movie, I guess. But I couldn't. I was like, that was just so fucking trite, juvenile, just clearly had what was supposed to be a high concept and was done in a really silly, sophomoric way. But it's funny, because that movie should have been about some of the things I've just been talking about, the difficulty of cross-cultural communication. In that movie, it results in disasters and people get hurt and people die. But what I've been talking about is saying, in producing products for world markets, those things get dumbed down to the point of being annoyingly vapid, empty, not very enjoyable. Alejandro Inarritu did a movie about that topic, but didn't really get it. Babel. And then later, The Revenant. I don't want to see any of his other fucking movies. People, really go on about Birdman. I think he did Birdman. That's another one Red Letter Media really likes, and I bet you if I watched it, I would think the same thing. Birdman, a movie for stupid people to like to try to prove that they're not stupid. Maybe I'm being too brutal. Let me know. Let me know what you thought about any of this stuff, any of these movies. This discussion could go on and on and on. I only covered 4 or 5 of the points that Rob Ager brought up about why post-millennial movies suck. Okay, the proper name of his video is 26 Reasons Why Post-Millennial Movies Are So Awful, which I'll link to in the description below. Go check it out if you're a big movie fan, as I am. I think I've proved that here today. Give me some examples of movies that really fucking pissed you off for any of those reasons or all of those reasons. Some blank art canvas movies that are actually conceptually empty, as Rob says. Some movies that just got things so wrong. Some movies that dumbed things down to the point where it was clear that they were trying to appeal to a mass global audience and then in that way ended up just sucking for everybody. Give me examples of intelligent writing that you enjoy and whatever. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, folks. Just thought I'd bang this one out quick on a Saturday morning. Oh, it's going to be afternoon before it's up, but hey, whatever. Hey, love movies. I really love movies, and I've tried to stay away from them on this channel because I had a certain format, but I'm getting away from that format now, and I'm doing whatever the fuck I want to do, if that's alright with you. And if it is alright with you, please check out the links on the screen right about now. Send me $1 or $2 via PayPal or sign up to my Patreon if you like, if you wish, if you'd like to help me out. Winter is very rough. I am quite broke. Middle of winter. There's still 2.5 months of this fucking ice and snow and brutality to go. I could just walk outside half naked and I'd be fine. Anyways, thanks a lot, folks. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.